had to do was find a secondary way back to their base. But there was one thing that significantly slowed the supply flow on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Rain turned the trails into muddy messes, rendering them too difficult to supply vehicles to maneuver. Vietnam is known for having one of the world's longest monsoon seasons, usually running from April to October. June, July, and August are the months with the heaviest rain. And so the Department of Defense decided to attempt to recreate this process. Their goal was to try to control the weather and extend the monsoon season for as long as they could. To achieve this, they resorted to cloud seeding. This process is thought to have originated in 1946 by Vincent Schaefer, a chemist employed by General Electric. Cloud seeding is a method for artificially producing rain or snow. It requires modifying a cloud's chemical structure to boost the chances of precipitation. The added substance is silver iodide, which works as a condensation agent. There are two ways to disperse cloud seeding agents, either using large cannons to shoot the particles into the sky, or using airplanes to drop the particles from above. Throughout the planning period, the program went by several names to maintain its secrecy. Operation Popeye ended up being its official name. In a memorandum sent in January 1967 from Deputy Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Floyd D. Kohler to then Secretary of State Dean Rusk, Kohler described Project Popeye's goals, stating, quote, "The objective is to inhibit overland vehicular movement and to reinforce the bottlenecks already created at stream crossings by the bombing of bridges and ferry installations. With respect to Laos, the objective is to extend rainfall through the dry season, keeping the ground as near the saturation point as possible and obstructing traffic that normally fords streams during the low water period. By generating rain, the American Army would slow the Viet Cong's truck traffic, impairing the supply flow throughout the trail and leaving them more susceptible to other attacks." Kohler also believed that cloud seeding was relatively more ethical than common warfare, stating, quote, "With respect to North Vietnam, we believe that as an interdiction measure, Popeye operations would be less harmful to the population and the area affected than bombing. For Operation Popeye to be successful, it had to be carried out with the utmost secrecy. If information about America playing God and controlling the weather came out, there might be speculation about man-made alterations in other climatic anomalies they had no connection with. However, American planners were also convinced that their intervention on the weather would inevitably be discovered. According to Deputy Undersecretary Kohler's memo, quote, "In the first place, the altered weather will be observable, in contrast to the experimental phase conducted during normally rainy periods. Disclosure of planned weather experiments in India would make it likely that the connection would become apparent. Secondly, the possibility of a U.S. seeding aircraft being downed cannot be discounted. Thirdly, there is virtually no aspect of military operations in Southeast Asia which has not over time become the subject of leaks, or at least of speculation in the press." Operation Popeye is thought to be the first known successful application of weather control technology in warfare. The first flight of the operation took off on March 20th, 1967. A total of 2,602 flights were made in 5 monsoon seasons, from March to November. The 54th Weather Reconnaissance Squadron executed the cloud seeding procedure using the slogan, "Make mud, not war." Within their squadron, the operation was codenamed Motor Pool. 3 Lockheed C-130 Hercules aircraft and 2 McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom aircraft, based at Udon Thani Royal Thai Air Force Base, were altered and fitted with silver iodide ejectors. The 5 cloud seeding jets had the standard Southeast Asia camouflage colors and markings, but no unit identifiers, likely because the operation was top secret. The squadron flew 2 rainmaking operations per day, while also generating report data, which they presented to their superiors. The flights were officially logged in as standard weather reconnaissance flights. The Viet Cong would not know where the rain was coming from. The initial range of operations for Popeye was the eastern half of the Laotian Panhandle. 4 months after the first official flight, the area of intervention was increased towards North Vietnam. In September 1967, the Ao Sha Valley in South Vietnam was also added to the mix. As bomb operations over North Vietnam expanded, that area was eliminated from the list on April 1st, 1968. Likewise, the southern regions of North Vietnam became part of the operational site for only a couple of months. In 1972, northeastern Cambodia was added to the operational zone. A total of 47,409 units of cloud seed cartridges were expended. The operation's details were so secret that the soldiers who got selected to participate were usually kept in the dark until the last minute. Everyone had their own theory about what Operation Popeye was really about. Soldier Howard Kibble said, quote, "I had fleeting thoughts of flying over China, working for the CIA, you name it. But I signed a statement and found out that I was going to make rain. Geez, I thought they were kidding." Ethical and environmental concerns were Operation Popeye's downfall. An article in the Washington Post in 1971 by reporter Jack Anderson revealed that the U.S. was engaged in clandestine weather weaponization in Vietnam. The information was corroborated by the Pentagon Papers leak released by Daniel Ellsberg. The following year, in July of 1972, journalist Seymour Hersh reported in the New York Times about Operation Popeye using the headline, "Rainmaking is used as a weapon by the U.S." The article describes how some officials opposed the radical idea and even doubted its effectiveness due to the unknown long-term consequences, stating, quote, "Despite years of experiments with rainmaking in the U.S. and elsewhere, scientists are not sure they understand its long-term effect on the ecology of a region." A few days after the story's publication, the entire program was officially ended, and all cloud seeding missions stopped. Silver iodide, a material used in cloud seeding condensation, is known to be toxic to aquatic life. So when used in the long term, precipitation from seeded clouds could harm the environment. The news caught the eye of Democratic Senator Claiborne Pell, who demanded to have the specifications of Operation Popeye officially declassified and released to the public. As one of the leaders of the operation, Lieutenant Harry Edward Soyster was asked to testify in front of the Committee on Foreign Relations. He told them everything he knew.
Sie brauchen ein neues Bad, sind aber noch nie in Kontakt mit einer Beratung gewesen. In diesem Video zeige ich Ihnen die 5 relevantesten Erfolgsfaktoren. Mit denen sparen Sie garantiert Zeit, Nerven und Zeit. Ich bin Daniel Keller von Faust, Küche und Bäder. Bis heute habe ich rund 1000 Badzimmerumbauten begleiten. Ob der Umbau Spass macht und zum Erfolg führt, hängt maßgeblich von 5 Erfolgsfaktoren ab. Bereit? Winkel, Raumhöhe, Fenster, Anschlüsse. Alles muss millimetergenau passen. Mein Tipp: überlassen Sie das Ausmessen an den Profi. Wenn Sie das selber übernehmen und sich dabei vermessen, führt das sehr wahrscheinlich zu finanziellen Konsequenzen. Also unbedingt einen Badeplaner mit Bauleiter ausbilden. Er kann vor Ort alle baulichen Gegebenheiten abchecken. So wird Sie von Anfang an der Umbau realistischer. Wenn Sie stressfrei umbauen möchten, dann empfehle ich Ihnen, den Umbau mit den Bauleitern koordinieren zu lassen. Klar, sicher denken Sie, dass ich das ja sagen muss, als Unterleiter für Faust. Aber die Faustbauleiter koordinieren alle Termine im Bauprogramm, arbeiten mit einem eingespielten und regionalen Handwerkerteam zusammen und verhandeln die besten Preise für Sie. Sie brauchen einen Sanitär, Elektriker, Bretterleger, Maurer, Schreiner und so weiter. Wir alle wollen wissen, wann wer was macht und wie lange das dauert. Und genau das ist wichtig. Und Sie müssen sich nicht mit jedem einzelnen Handwerker umschlagen. Die Koordination durch den Bauleiter spart viel Nerven und Geld. Ein Fünfzieler für einen kompletten Radumbau mit einem Pauschalpreis, das sollten Sie stützen nehmen. Sie sollten wissen, was genau geliefert wird, wie viel was kostet und wer was macht. Auch das Bauprogramm ist spätestens nach Auftragserteilung Pflicht. Schliesslich müssen Sie wissen, von wann bis wann Ihr Bad nicht nutzbar sein wird. Die Faust ist volle Transparenz eine Selbstverständlichkeit. Wir offerieren jedes Produkt mit Detailbild und Detailpreis. Mit allen Plänen und einer fotorealistischen Darstellung für Ihre neue Badezimmer sowie jede Handwerkerleistung im Detail. Gern schiebt der eine Handwerker die Schuld auf den anderen. Vermeiden Sie unnötige Streitereien und Verzögerungen und übergeben Sie die Verantwortung dazu am Bauleiter. Er sorgt dafür, dass auftretende Probleme schnell, kompetent und möglichst ohne Kostenfolge gelöst werden. Wir von Faust übernehmen sogar Garantie für alle Handwerkerleistungen. Ein schönes neues Badzimmer kostet Geld. Anders als bei einem verlängerten Wellnesswochenende, wo je nach Resort auch recht schnell viel Geld kostet, profitieren Sie von Ihrer eigenen Wellnessoase über Jahrzehnte. Überlegen Sie also gut, was ist mir mein Wohlbefinden über die Jahre wert und was brauche ich, damit ich entspannen kann. Sie möchten sich inspirieren lassen, dann empfehle ich Ihnen das Video «Die besten Ideen für Ihr neues Badezimmer». Ich hoffe, meine Tipps helfen Ihnen, Ihr Badprojekt mit einem guten Gefühl fortzumachen. Ich und meine 120 Kolleginnen und Kollegen sind jederzeit für Sie da und beantworten Ihre Fragen gerne. Sagt das auf dem Kanal oder in einem von unseren 40 Badzimmerbestellungen.
An 1 ab. Bei ABC Sports zeigen wir die Olympischen Sommerspiele 1972 von hier in München, Westdeutschland. Die Spiele sind die ersten in der Geschichte, die hinaus via Satellit in die Welt geschickt werden. Und wir sind raus. Gute Arbeit, kleiner Mann. Morgen werde ich das Lied ziehen. Keine Minuten bis 10. Das ist mein Sektor versprochen. In Ordnung.
Wir haben Schlüssel gehört.
Du, Schlüssel gehört? Was? Wie ist die Lage?
Man geht davon aus, dass das israelische Team überfallen wurde.
Womit haben wir es hier zu tun?
Terroristen.
Es gibt eine Geiselnahme. In diesem Moment über Lömuschendorf. Die Direktion wird das ABC News übernehmen.
Nicht übel nehmen, Leute. Aber ihr seid vom Sport, das ist zu groß für euch.
Wir sind nur 100 Meter von da, wo es passiert.
Das ist nicht mehr die Olympiade.
Das ist unsere Story. Und die werden wir behalten.
3, 2, 1.
Ich bin Jimmy Kay, ich spreche zu Ihnen live aus dem ABC-Sendezentrum. Der Frieden der sogenannten heiteren Spiele wurde heute erschüttert.
Wir folgen der Story, so wie sie passiert, in Echtzeit.
Zum ersten Mal sehen wir einige der Geiseln.
9 angsterfüllte Menschen.
Ist das die Sehen, was wir sind? Natürlich. Können die Terroristen auch zusehen? Ist das jetzt unsere Schuld?
Das sind normale Streifenpolizisten, die für sowas nicht ausgebildet sind.
Unser Job ist es, die Geschichte zu erzählen, derer, die da gefangen sind, deren Leben gefährdet ist.
Falls die jemanden erschießen. Live im Fernsehen. Okay, wessen Story ist das? Unsere oder ihre? The cost of Operation Popeye was about $3.6 million per year, which included the operation and maintenance of the modified jets, purchase of seating materials, and pay for the people involved in the project. The timing of all these public announcements did not work out well for the Department of Defense. In 1972, the environmental boom in America was burgeoning. In addition, the Nixon administration was already struggling with the beginning stages of the infamous Watergate scandal. When the public, especially environmental activists, found out that America had secretly been playing God, altering the weather in Vietnam, They were outraged. The operations were dubbed the Watergate of weather warfare. Operation Popeye was officially terminated on July 5th, 1972. In 1977, the U.S. joined the Environmental Modification Convention Treaty, or ENMOD, an international treaty which formally banned weather modification for malicious purposes. The agreement banned causing earthquakes and tsunamis, steering hurricanes, or tampering with the ionosphere. It also prohibited any kind of severe damage to the environment. Since cloud seeding has never been used in warfare again, the results cannot be measured or compared. Author James Roger Fleming agreed, stating, quote, "Although some claim that Operation Popeye induced from 1 to 7 inches of additional rainfall annually along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, no scientific data were collected to verify the claim." Even if Operation Popeye did help a few U.S. victories in Vietnam, a fact that is impossible to determine, its extreme secrecy and denials by the military and the government resulted in a significant strategic defeat for climatic modification with military purposes.
In the late summer of 1971, final preparations were being made on Amchitka Island in the remote Aleutian Island chain of Alaska for Project Canakin. Canakin was the United States Atomic Energy Commission underground nuclear detonation to proof test a warhead for the Spartan missile of the Safeguard Ballistic Missile Defense Program. The nuclear device and instrumentation canisters were lowered in a hole lined with 54-inch diameter steel casing into a mined cavity 5,875 feet beneath the surface of the island. The hole then was completely stemmed or backfilled with material designed to assure that the radioactivity produced by the detonation would be completely contained underground. The Canakin device was predicted to have a yield of less than 5 megatons. Prior to the test, everyone left the island except for 242 persons who were at the control point at the northwest tip of Amchitka, about 23 miles from ground zero. The closest places where people live are military bases at Adak and Shimya, about 200 miles away. Following the day of a violent storm with winds exceeding 100 miles an hour, the Canakin experiment was conducted on Saturday, November 6, 1971, at 11 a.m. Bering Standard Time. While water turbulence was created in the immediate vicinity of Amchitka, no tsunami or large ocean wave was observed or recorded.
I want to be a part of a team. I know you are a fake. No.
Ground shock resulting directly from the detonation was felt as a rocking motion at the control point 23 miles away and was faintly perceptible at military bases on Adak and Shimya. There is no record of ground motion being felt at more distant locations. Seismic recordings of the test showed a body wave magnitude of 6.8 and a surface wave magnitude of 5.7 as a direct result of the detonation. high-speed camera was aimed at the cableway extending between Ground Zero and the recording trailer park. The energy produced by the detonation caused the surface of the island directly above the device to be raised momentarily approximately 25 feet. The dark material seen rising from the ground was loose dirt from roads and construction areas. The lighter material was water from some of the many small lakes on the island and surface water from rain. As was predicted, all of the radioactive material from the test was contained underground. No radioactivity resulting from the test has been detected or is expected at the surface or in the sea. Surveillance will continue for a number of years. Specially designed shock mitigation mounts were installed on trailers containing data recording instruments. The slow-motion camera at the recording trailer park recorded the reaction of the instrument trailers to the 2 pulses of ground acceleration caused by the detonation. Some rocks and sea stacks along the coast were damaged by ground motion. Preliminary indications were that the beach and ocean floor in the near vicinity of the Canniken site were raised 4 to 6 feet permanently. As predicted, some bioenvironmental effects of Canniken were noticeable, but no permanent harm to Amchitka's wildlife population or plant life is expected. As ground motion from the explosion moved through water in lakes near the test point, it created a momentary sharp rise in pressure, and water was thrown into the air. This photo sequence was cut short because of the effect of strong ground motion on the photo station.
Listen to this. No excuses anymore. There's so much.
This view after Canakin shows that the tundra surface in the ground zero area was considerably cracked and otherwise disturbed, as had been expected. Temporary buildings in this area were badly damaged, but the metal building containing instrumentation cable reels had only minor damage, even though it was located within 250 feet of ground zero.
Rückenschmerzen? Thermacare bekämpft sie ganz ohne Arzneiwirkstoff und lockert verspannte Muskeln. Gönnen Sie Ihrem Körper die Kraft der Wärme.
The transition toward renewable energy sources calls for the right.
The shock mitigation system in the recording trailer park was satisfactory. All classified experiments designed to measure the device performance recorded data, and preliminary examination indicated that the desired information was obtained. Along the Bering Sea coastline, cliff and turf falls were greater than had been predicted for a 2-mile stretch near ground zero. Approximately 38 hours after the test, a subsidence in the ground zero area was formed when rock above the cavity created by the detonation collapsed all the way to the surface. When the final collapse occurred, seismic instruments indicated the resulting earth disturbance had a body wave magnitude of 4.9. A survey indicated an irregular surface subsidence about 1.5 miles across, with a maximum depth of about 55 feet.
Stripey XM33. 4.
Johnston Island was the center of launch and experimental activity for the 1962 high-altitude weapon effects testing termed Operation Fishbowl. But Johnston Island was only the core of fishbowl activity. Radiating out in all directions from this tiny island, 800 miles southwest of Hawaii, were instrumented stations, 266 of them, at sea, in the air, and on land, encompassing a major portion of the Pacific Ocean, all geared to collect effects data from nuclear bursts at high altitude. Now to set this broad stage in greater detail. Within the limited confines of Johnston Island itself, the operations testing and support facilities were crowded into every square niche, including space between the existing Air Force Station plant and buildings. Some apparatus and offices crammed into World War II bomb shelters, including the scientific readiness team, task force control personnel, and launch control units. At the northwestern end of the island was the Thor launch complex, joined later by 90 Hercules and Striker units, plus a second Thor pad. Fishbowl's line of more than 30 instrument rocket launchers with attendant checkout facilities were sandwiched between the island's runway and the shore. This Pacific Missile range ship, berthed at the island's lone pier, kept an electronic eye on the missile for range safety purposes. A beacon tracking system followed the scientific pods and rocket instrumentation and backed up the Pacific Missile range tracking and impact prediction systems. Standing offshore were 9 instrumented test ships, vital links in the fishbowl effort, including the DAMP ship, acronym for Downrange Anti-Missile Measurements Program Ship, American Mariner. Pod recovery and surveillance ships, and an evacuation aircraft carrier, which took aboard personnel non-essential to the island operation during each event, completed the ship array in the northern hemisphere. On islands south of the equator, in Johnston's southern magnetic conjugate area, a variety of instrumentation to collect effects data was set up for fishbowl. Stations dotted the American small island of Tutuila, as well as the main islands of the Fiji and Tonga groups, and to the east, Rarotonga. After preparations in Samoa's harbor, Pango Pango, the instrumented motor ship Acadia moved out prior to shot day to be on the station designated for each event, concurrent with the departure of the balloon launch vessel Taipuku. Fiji's jet airport at Nambi was the operating base for 3 fishbowl aircraft. On each event, a KC-135 and 2 RC-121s gathered southern conjugate effects data. Closer to the equator, the coral atolls of Canton, Farjolaine, and Palmyra also held many of the trailers, structures, and antenna towers representative of the fishbowl test effort. North of Johnston, 4 main Hawaiian islands, as well as French frigate shoals, Midway, and Wake Island, mark the location for many instrumentation sites. For each event, approximately a dozen test aircraft, including optical and hybrid experiment planes, rose from Oahu's Hickam Air Force Base and headed south. Also to the west on Okinawa, in the far north at Adak and Fairbanks, as well as at Palo Alto, California, instrumentation was operated for fishbowl's test events. During the latter part of the operation, other stations were added. All in all, of the 266 fishbowl instrument stations, 156 were on land, while 10 ships housed 80 separate project stations. 15 test aircraft carried the other 30 stations. The need for the test work carried on at Johnston and its far-flung array was compelling, for it stemmed from urgent Department of Defense operational needs requiring that high-altitude phenomena resulting from a nuclear burst be defined, with simultaneous direct measurements on military operational equipment. For while America had been making rapid strides in other aspects of missile technology, its investigation of high-altitude nuclear detonation effects had lagged due to the 1958 test moratorium imposed shortly after the nation's first look at nuclear effects at high altitudes. This initial exploration in 1958 was limited to 6 shots, with attempts to collect data with untried experimental instrumentation in an environment alien to the nuclear test tubes. From a ship in the South Atlantic, 3 small detonations, known as the Argus series, were launched and triggered aloft for the purpose of examining the Christophilus theory that a long-lived belt of trapped electrons could be artificially created by a very high-altitude nuclear explosion. Other effects on Argus, although measured, were not thoroughly documented. In the Pacific, as part of the hardtack series, 3 effect shots, Yucca, Orange, and Tea, were detonated at respectively 26, 43, 77 kilometers, primarily to provide information on the change of blast, nuclear, and thermal effects with increasing altitude. From hardtack's limited test experimentation, one lesson learned was that widely diverse quantitative effects were produced at different altitudes, including major electromagnetic disturbances, causing communications and radar blackout problems. The nature of each effect could be learned only by actual testing. More than the information they furnished, these 1958 shots indicated how much more there was to learn about nuclear burst-created atmospheric ionization. Filling this information gap after the 3.5-year lull was Operation Fishbowl's mission, carefully patterned to the Department of Defense's needs. These operational requirements shaped up into objectives centering around 3 main lines of inquiry. One objective concerned ICBM acquisition, tracking, and intercept problems. It was essential for both defensive and offensive planning that experimental data be obtained on the effects of high-altitude nuclear bursts on radar performance. Another objective dealt with the evaluation of ICBM damage and kill mechanisms. DoD needed an evaluation of the effectiveness of nuclear detonations at high altitude for killing incoming ICBMs, vital to the nation's anti-ICBM effort. This knowledge, in turn, would indicate the relative vulnerability of U.S. ICBM re-entry vehicles. A third objective concerned communications blackout, that is, the loss of signals due to disturbances in the ionosphere caused by high-altitude detonations. It was necessary to know the ensuing effects on military command and control systems, which require long-range communications. These military objectives meshed into the overall fishbowl objective of gaining a vertical scale of information for various altitudes and yields. Included in the wide assortment of fishbowl projects were thermal studies on iBird, investigation of debris distribution, and documentation of the nature and transport of the magnetic field disturbance generated by high-altitude detonation. On Operation Fishbowl, nuclear detonations rent the sky 5 times over the Johnston Island area, each time during the hours of darkness. Of the 5 fishbowl shots, the highest burst was the 400-kilometer Starfish event, launched by a pod-carrying Thor missile. Its yield was 1.4 megatons. In addition to the local phenomena, the transport of bomb debris and other charged particles in the magnetic field produced colorful aurora, arcing into the northern and southern conjugate regions. Checkmate, like Starfish, did not display a well-defined fireball. Checkmate exhibited a moderate aurora seen in both the northern and southern conjugate areas. Kingfisher's fireball was well defined, and its aurora moderate. 5 events, we will offer a selection of the test instrumentation associated with the DoD scientific objectives, along with some of the preliminary results obtained. Any conclusions which follow must be tempered by the understanding that the measurements made are valid only under the conditions of the experiments. For the first objective, the rockets fired from these launches along the Johnston runway played a major role in probing the capability of detecting and tracking incoming ICBMs. Some rockets, launched in conjunction with the burst, were positioned in time and space to chart radar transmission paths through the burst environment. The aim was to help establish the space-time parameters of various blackout phenomena involving fireball, X-rays, beta, gamma, and neutrons, as well as directly measure radar capability to track and locate objects, such as re-entry vehicles and decoys. Guidance of anti-ICBMs through the blackout was also studied. This radar dish on Johnston Island scanned the sky to gain information on intensity and extent of the clutter produced. It mapped 3 frequencies of operational importance: 400, 800, and 1200 megacycles. RC-121 aircraft also measured the amount of clutter in both the north and south conjugate regions. On Johnston Island, passive radio frequency receiving instrumentation sought data on the effect of noise from the burst region on radar performance. All this instrumentation took the measure of attenuation, refraction, clutter, and noise, the chief electromagnetic effects on radar performance. A serious electromagnetic effect was attenuation in the vicinity of the fireball, both its duration and its spatial extent, neither of which was measured sufficiently on Operation Hardtack. Rocket-borne beacons launched at H+5 and 15 minutes to seek late-time attenuation effects obtained no readily identifiable results. On Kingfish, the damp ship observed radar transmission paths through the fireball region from a C-band beacon from H+5 to 25 seconds, observing complete blackout and loss of track during this period. A Johnston Island receiver observed severe attenuation at 950 and 4750 megacycles through the beta patch for 60 seconds. On Tightrope, severe attenuations were measured up to 1 minute after burst. While the attenuating volume was greatly reduced in size, the amount and duration of attenuation was still significant. Refraction effects from a nuclear burst are of concern in the high-precision target tracking of ICBMs in the terminal phase. Although radar on the damp ship and Johnston Island showed no gross refractive effects from any of the bursts, preliminary results indicate a refractive jitter problem under certain conditions, involving a rapid fluctuation in the apparent angle of arrival of returning radar pulses. It was present on all events, but most pronounced on Bluegill and Kingfish. Another electromagnetic effect important to DoD's search capability is clutter, which could hamper radar performance for a period longer than other effects. Radar clutter is caused by ionized air, ionized bomb debris, and electrons trapped in the magnetic field. All these materials reflect radar energy, giving rise to false targets on the radar scope. Our first consideration is the reflection clutter from the fireball itself. Confined to the visible fireball, it is most pronounced when a well-formed fireball is generated. Another problem is presented by field-aligned clutter, observed in that region of the sky for which the observer is at right angles to the magnetic field lines at E-layer heights, and within an azimuth of about 15 degrees to either side of magnetic north. Field-aligned debris provides a host of fluctuating pseudo-targets over a large sky area. A radar system can evaluate them as false targets, but by sheer numbers, they may grossly overload the associated computer, which must check out each one of them. serious electromagnetic effects from the burst, least bothersome to radar performance is noise. Highly sensitive advanced radar systems are adversely affected by the detonation's broadband radio frequency noise, since it reduces the signal-to-noise ratio. These instrumented pods, utilized during the starfish, bluegill, and kingfish events, played an important role in the DoD objective embracing the study of ICBM kill mechanisms, as well as determining the vulnerability of U.S. ICBM materials to these effects. The pods, 3 on each store, were engineered to be deployed to pre-calculated positions from the burst, so oriented as to expose the instrumentation to the burst. All the pods housed similar instrumentation to gain data close to the detonation on blast, neutron, and gamma radiation. However, the instrumentation of recorded X-ray and thermal effects was somewhat different. The 3 pods on bluegill housed instrumentation to gain data on the thermal output and its effects. The starfish and kingfish pods concentrated on X-ray radiation and its effect on re-entry vehicle materials. Some thermal measuring devices were also carried on kingfish. Post-shot recovery of the pods involved ship and helicopter convergence in the area, drawn by radio signals, flashing lights, and green dye.
This music really looks so bad.
Fished out, the pods were taken to the Johnston Island recovery area, where removal of the scientific instrumentation for inspection and preliminary data readout was conducted. The pod program was relatively successful despite orientation problems and loss of some instrumentation due to hard landings. Preliminary results are limited mostly to the observable effects on the numerous re-entry vehicle materials exposed. One other observable effect was the shadow cast as the X-ray swept past the raised instrumentation on the pod backplate. Specific quantitative values are not available yet from either the X-ray or thermal studies. However, X-ray impulses measured were near those expected. Meanwhile, the interpretative work toward application to the kill mechanisms and kill distances for various types of RVs is underway. For the DoD communications blackout objective, this station in the Fiji Islands was one of the many links in the group of simulated high-frequency networks set up for Fishbowl. Their function was to investigate the effects of high-altitude nuclear detonation on military command and control systems utilizing long-range communications. One project utilized oblique incidence ionospheric sounders in a controlled network to obtain data over 28 propagation paths covering both the primary and conjugate areas. Information was obtained on 160 frequencies in the range between 4 and 64 megacycles. Also for each event, existing military operational communications links throughout the Pacific area were monitored to determine the disruptive effects caused by the fishbowl bursts. In the high-frequency experiments, burst-induced ionization altered propagation conditions, but caused no widespread outage. After the detonation, usable frequencies tended to be higher than pre-burst values. On some paths, propagation conditions were enhanced by the creation of new modes or paths. Almost all conditions had returned to normal by H plus 2 hours, except on starfish, where effects were detectable Pacific-wide for 2 days. Checkmate caused some adverse effects on transmission paths within 700 kilometers of Johnston Island for about 30 minutes. Kingfish altered propagation conditions on paths within 2,500 kilometers of the burst point, as well as throughout the southern conjugate area for several hours. Bluegill caused blackout for about 1 minute of certain high-frequency signals whose paths passed within 200 kilometers of the Johnston Island area, with lesser effects observed on these paths for 2 hours. Tightrope produced no observable propagation changes. VHF and UHF communication circuits were not degraded by the high-altitude events. Encouraging results were obtained from a strategic air command experiment, testing its airborne communication system during several high-altitude nuclear bursts. Signals from an UHF transmitter on Johnston Island were received by a KC-135 aircraft in the area and retransmitted to a relay B-47, which in turn retransmitted the signal to Hickam Air Force Base. Communications were not disrupted on this circuit by the high-altitude events. Also, the fishbowl tests were all conducted at night. Therefore, the effects are not necessarily indicative of those produced by a daytime shot. Of the many other projects of vital military interest on fishbowl, we shall give the results only on the iBird studies. Rabbits and monkeys on airborne platforms and ground stations were exposed to the thermal radiation from both high altitude and atmospheric detonations. Chorioretinal burn results from the atmospheric shocks, all detonated below 15,000 feet, confirmed previous data on the distance parameters for known yields. Contrary to expectation, bluegill produced extensive eye burning, the most severe of the series. No other fishbowl event produced burns except tightrope, where the moderate burns received conformed to predictions. We will summarize the results of Operation Fishbowl and their relationship to the DoD objectives. For answers on the anti-ICBM radar performance of acquisition, tracking, and intercept after a nuclear burst, the salient electromagnetic effects of attenuation, refraction, clutter, and noise showed the following results. The optical measurements documented the spatial, temporal, and spectral characteristics of UV optical infrared effects associated with the detonations in the burst area, as well as the southern conjugate region. In the POD program, concerned with the evaluation of AICBM damage and kill mechanisms, the pertinent finding to date is that X-ray impulses measured tend to confirm predictions. From the extensive measurements on communications blackout, some tentative conclusions can be drawn. VLF is relatively unaffected. However, rapid and persistent phase changes can be detrimental to navigational systems. LF is generally degraded, especially phase lock systems such as LORAN-C. HF is extensively degraded, but can be improved by the use of a system for rapid frequency shifting. VHF effects are similar to HF, except for less severe absorption. The UHF line of sight is relatively unaffected. Utilization of all these results must reflect the limitations of the fishbowl experiment. The fact that all were night bursts, and that the effects were only based on single detonations. The communications problem resulting from multiple nuclear bursts would be serious, but adequate planning and technical sophistication should make it possible to maintain limited communications at all times. Besides the results on main fishbowl objectives, a host of valuable contributions were made by the many other participating projects. Since the list of findings from the 5 fishbowl events is a long and continuing one, with miles of records still to be reduced and analyzed, this report marks only a beginning in the fishbowl chronicle. With America now of necessity peering skyward in its quest for security, the results gleaned from 1962's high-altitude operation contribute both to this safeguard role and to scientific enlightenment on the effects of the atom above the atmosphere.
Caterpillars and trucks, 40 in all. Here are no port facilities, but the Navy showed its self-sufficiency as it did throughout the war, operating at sea without bases or with improvised bases. Here are no docks or roads, yet all freight for 3 heavily laden ships hauled 2 miles over the ice up to Little America. Dog snakes, barking, tugging, boatload of muskies, and the buses, growing fatter and bigger every day. All are happy with the wealthy smell of snow in their houses. This is home. This is fun. But this is work, too. Time is short. The dogs must haul their share of the dunning. Oh, trouble ahead. Pressure ridges block the way into Little America. Even the largest caterpillars are stalled. The call goes out for dynamite crews, Navy's trained demolition team, seasoned on enemy beaches. They must blast the 50-foot ridges, clear the way to meet the expedition time.
Ein Schluck Dolce Vita. Birra Moretti. Jetzt noch alkoholfrei.
Everything takes hours. CBs and their bulldozers follow, smooth out the road for the big cats. In 2 hours, they bridge crevasses 100 feet deep. And so 10,000 tons of gear brought down by the cargo ships start moving up to Little America. Work goes steadily forward. CBs, with all hands helping, use every one of the 24 hours of daylight in the South Pole summer. Caterpillars with snowshoe oversized treads accomplish in hours the work that in old days hundreds of dogs could do only in weeks. Air strips, smoothed out with drag, take high priority. Bird has flagged word from the Philippine Sea, now standing by off the pack ice. He's ready to fly his R-14. It's up to the work parties to make up the time lost in the pack ice. Up to these men to work while gusty winds drive flesh-cutting gravel-like snow across the open, or to dig deep for storehouse foundations. Food dumps grow steadily. Here is the favorite hangout of the Bedlam Huskies, Ricky. Born in Little America 12 years before, and still hungry. Each hour brings other buildings to completion. Knock down one again, grow magically. The air headquarters concept is ready. Snow blocks are dug out for windbreaker walls. These blocks are the adobe of Little America. Good idea, talks the sidewalk superintendent of the base. Good idea. These big penguins do right well to bear in mind that when she blows down here, she's liable to blow your eyelashes off. The little athlete shows no fear. What? Smoke? Silly idea. The ships are all but empty. Caterpillars, Go Devils, live up to their wartime good name. Within 70 hours, CBs are hauling in the last 500 tons of essentials. Only a few more cases to be broken out. The local waterworks is the pride of the CBs. 3 GI cans of snow produce 1 can of water, purest in the world. Keep your furnace going, make steam. Which melts snow, which makes water. Simple. Simple once CB Engineering in Washington had figured it out before ever the first ship left port. And now, the ordered streets of a tent city that is Little America the port come into being where 3 days before the primeval snow lay unbroken. The church flag, the first Sunday, signifies a pause for prayers. After the last Mass, that's the Protestant and Jewish services, the off-duty sailors have but one thought. Transportation has but one term, the mess hall. Best dinner of the week, as ancient Navy tradition always has decreed. Admirals and captains wait their turn in the chow line with the men. Inside, plates are loaded. Roast beef, rich gravy, high mounds of mashed potatoes, flaky pie. Life looks up again. A cigarette. Good coffee. 5 miles east of Little America, a steel bird, 500 strong, has its feeding ground amongst pressure ridges and the deep crevasses. Ricky, as a pup, plays a game of run, seal, run. He has forgotten. Seal wallops with his tail. Ricky's 12-year-old teeth are not so good on the slippery wet hide of the 600-pound Liddell. Mr. Seal decides he's had enough. Scuttles down his escape hatch to the water below. Chow time. The only seals killed are for dog meat. Especially good because it ensures against scurvy. The pups smell their dinner coming, let their handler plainly know they want it right now. They're only a few months old and forever hungry. Yet soon they will be pulling more than their weight in the sledge traces. They like their meat red. Will fight for it. The flagship flashes word by radio to the carrier Philippine Sea. Base ready, weather suitable.
On the carrier, 6 planes, triple checked, are ready for their moment of destiny. Admiral Byrd has given the pilots the final briefing. Everything depends on split-second timing.
Pilots, and your plane.
No 3,000-foot runway here. Only a scant 300 feet. Jet propulsion is their reliance. Crewmen attach jet containers moored to a plane. These JSO bottles are packed with flaming power. In the critical 10 seconds to take off, they give the kick-up of 2 added engines. Bird is airborne at exactly 100 feet. Admiral Byrd and his companion plane will try the 800-mile flight first. The others await his orders.
At Little America, the cameramen and Admiral Cruzen wait anxiously. There comes Byrd. Cruzen can relax now. Skis work perfectly. The carefully calculated drag of the wheels serves only to shoot up a plume of snow. Byrd greets his son, Dickie Jr. first, here following Dad's footsteps. They watch plane number 2 come in safely. Byrd tells Cruzen good to be home again. Cruzen has urgent news. There's a terrific storm brewing. Only 10 hours more of safe flying. Byrd radios the carrier, launch all planes as soon as possible.
By midnight, the Philippine Sea has the remaining 4 planes ready. They must risk a takeoff in darkness before the terror of the storm strikes. Daylight finds the planes over the pack ice, with frozen depth below and weather closing in. Navigation becomes tricky. This close to the pole, the magnetic compass is no help.
At the base, men scan the gray skies, looking, and finding only the blackness of the approaching storm now visible to the east. If the planes don't make it within an hour, but in they come, one by one, to land in the last remnants of clear light. Each landing is the first on the ice for each pilot. These men are the first ever to fly big planes into the Antarctic. Or on previous expeditions, the planes were freighted in, assembled, and only then were they flown. These Navy and Marine Corps flyers have been bred on stormy going. Their long experience and, above all, the Navy's relentless training in all details brings them in, but with little time to spare. The blizzard hits, 100 miles an hour, scouring across the sastrugi. In storms such as this, many brave explorers have died. With the first abatement of the storm, work parties head for the plains. The blizzard is 40 hours old. Wind has become bearable. The expedition flight schedules are days behind. They must get the heaters going, clean out the frost. The Antarctic offers no quick machine service as on standard Navy airfields. Fuel for the heaters must be hand-dragged, hand-pumped, hand-fed, with the temperature far below freezing. The chow wagon, the never-failing CV tractor, gives the work parties a lift back to the masthead for hot coffee, food, and water. Only the Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Army cameramen who made this official record know the price they've paid for these blizzard films. They covered the Pacific battles for posterity. This cold day, they froze their whiskers to make these first color films of an Antarctic blizzard. Little America digs out. The planes still stand on the line uninjured. Icicles and snow to be cleared off, but no plane blown away. Lashings held. Again, steady intact, proved out the technique of survival, evolved by Bird in a lifetime of exploration. Not 1/10 went down. No matter how great the pressure of work, the flag must be raised with a ceremony, which is its due. Admiral Byrd declares Little America the port in full operating commission. The Admiral and the party ride Weasel 12 miles south to visit his earliest camp, marked by the radio towers. Little America the first, now 40 feet under the snows of 17 years. And above it, Little America the second, 25 feet under the snows fallen since 1935. Captain Boyd's United States Marine Corps ties on a safety line. While Admiral Byrd and 3 veterans of his previous expeditions watch, Boyd inches his carcass down the old ventilating hatch. It stood 20 feet in the air when it was put up 12 years before. He pokes a stick up as a marker for the main hatch. Now all hands, the Admiral included, have a chance to go look. Below, the old-timers find the land, the light is once, and all manner of other things. For here in Antarctica, there is no decay, no rust, no dust, not even germs. Fruit, vegetables, meat, all good after 17 years. Small wonder Byrd preaches that one day Antarctica may be the world's storehouse to keep the 7 years surplus for the 7 lean years. Byrd, bringing with him the old corn cob he'd forgotten in 1930, comes up last. He's heavy going, but he makes it the hard way. Seems to like it.
Aboard the Mount Olympus, the Navy tries out one of the most important experiments assigned the expedition. Can men survive in freezing water? Men from Mars, members of a special underwater demolition team, wear the new cold water rubber survival suit. In contrast to these skylarking youngsters, eating ice cream in the ice, men in ordinary clothing are paralyzed in 6 minutes and die very quickly thereafter. Yet these sailors, wearing only underwear beneath their survival suits, stay in half an hour and come up chipper and warm. On the sunny afterdeck of the Mount Olympus, the expedition tries penguin catch. Big emperors are living the life of penguin rabbits. They grow 4 feet tall, weigh up to 80 pounds, and are the only creatures who live throughout the year on Antarctica. Eons ago, they flew. In time, their wings evolved into swimming fins. Their deep feathers are the warmest known. Their beak, thick leather-like pads. On these, they lay their single egg and tuck it up within the body feathers for warmth and hatching. In captivity, they must have their vitamins. Keeping them alive for the return voyage is quite a problem, for their bloodstreams have no germ resistance. Their necks are more bearing. Strangely enough, smaller captive penguins prefer their fish fillet. They won't eat live fish out of the pail. The rockhopper penguins are the clowns of the Antarctic. 20 inches high, cocky yellow eyebrows, sassy, and forever hungry. As the men find out, they'll eat their weighted fish every 3 days.
The gathering of scientific data ranks high in expedition plans. Admiral Byrd says goodbye and good luck to an over-ice expedition, which is a broke deep into the Rockefeller Mountains, 300 miles southeast. 2 LVTs hauling supply sledges strike out into the white darkness. Their mileage checked by bicycle wheel counters astern. In the mountain rocks, they will seek minerals and ancient petrified vegetation. Hourly, they will record important aerological data. But exploration by plane has priority 1. 1.5 million square miles are to be explored and mapped, and the oncoming winter soon will end flying weather. The wheels come off. The both takeoffs and landings on the ice must be made by skis alone, delicately balanced to feather in the wind, yet strong to stand the shattering shock of landings. Organized exploration on a scale hitherto undreamed of calls for precision timing. Each plane is serviced on exact schedule with 1,200 gallons of high-test gas and with preheated oil tested to function at 80 below. A pressure tank especially designed for operations in deep cold pump the oil into the planes. Daily flights begin. Each plane has a definite sector to explore, a definite time, a definite radio report schedule. While the weather holds, flights operate around the clock. For emergencies, the LVTs make provisions and fuel at the limit of their range. To aviators forced down, to rescue planes sent out to bring them in, these cairns may offer the one hope, and may mean ultimate survival.
1,200 miles to the east, the Eastern Group vessels and planes are exploring the mysterious Phantom Coast. Aboard the destroyer Boston, the commander of the Eastern Group, Captain George Dubeck, makes an exploration voyage. He sails close in to Mount Erebus, 14,000 feet above the sea. It is the only known active volcano near the South Pole. Captain Dubeck, his mission accomplished, returns to rendezvous with the seaplane tender Pine Island. Personnel transfers to the destroyer must be made by breeches buoy because of rough seas. This officer would probably prefer a boat. The deep roll in the destroyer's outward flaring bow forces the handling crew to wait for the exact moment to haul inboard, lest the man be dashed against the ship's side and killed. It is Captain Dubeck's turn next. The line is set higher. The seas run stronger. The ships roll dangerously apart. The line cracks, then snaps taut, and breaks. A 50-foot plunge down. The deck disappears. Away, lifeboats! Then jump to station. Lower away. Hurry, hurry. 8 minutes in this icy water means death. Speed is the only hope. Boat shears clear. Heads out fast to the rescue. Captain Dubeck reappears. He has managed to inflate his life jacket. Dubeck grabs the lifeline. The seaman crushes him. By a margin of seconds, he is saved.
1,500 miles west of America, the Currituck and her western group are off the Shackleton ice shelf, circling the Sunset Coast. The western group commander, Captain Bond, gives pilots and plane crews a last briefing on Antarctic dangers and the technique of survival forced down. The flight about to start is the longest and most important so far for the western group. Before takeoff, survival gear is checked. Gear to keep 9 men alive for 100 days. Food, drugs, bread, sleeping. On the water, the great PPN makes her takeoff run. The jet assist bottle flies. She lifts quickly into the air and circles the curve at once. Jet assist bottles, when work done, are dropped to make a salvo splash. The pilot, Commander David E. Bunker, wipes his frosted windshield, a constant source of trouble in polar flying. He is over the Shackleton ice shelf, named for the great English explorer who kept returning to the Antarctic until death so often escaped, kept its rendezvous. The smooth shelf roughness, dark rocks, called nunataks, appear above the ice. Then rugged mountain ranges as far as the eye can see. Bunker leans forward in amazement. His eyes caught a sudden and unbelievable change in scenery. The universal white is turned to chocolate brown, dotted with blue. A cameraman goes into action. 300 square miles of land without snow. Land that might be in New Mexico or Arizona. Pictures alone will prove Bunker has discovered a warm oasis in the shadow of the pole. It is for such supreme moments as this that men brave the hardships of exploration. The astounding, undreamed-of fact is that they are over a chain of warm water lakes, whose shores, except for small patches, are free of ice and snow. Commander Bunker circles the largest lake, 5 miles long. He comes in to make a landing. Water temperatures must be recorded. Samples taken. He finds the water fresh. Temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. On the shores are vast deposits of coal and of minerals of the utmost importance to civilization. Aside from their headline discovery, Bunger and his men have another good reason for hustling home to the curry top. A long-awaited ceremony is in progress. The whole fleet awaits news of the all-Western deer journey. The curry top skipper, Captain Clark, is judged. His salute of the day is right corner mustache. Yes. The captain awards prizes to the winners, enlisted men and officers alike, the champions of the first Antarctic deer. To the most handsome. For the butchers. To the officers of tribe. To the neatest. To the most unique. To the red all-clear touch. And to the one with the most sex.
And Little America, a warning sounds. The fleet is in such state. It is being frozen in. It may be locked within the Bay of Whales. Here is the treacherous foe. If caught, the ships will be wedged against the barrier, crushed. Here will be the graveyard of the fleet. The Coast Guard icebreaker Northwind goes into action. Ramming, backing, ramming again to break up the crushing floes. Landing craft work frantically to loosen the ice around the ships, so propellers may turn without shearing off. One by one, the ships are cleared, get underway. Byrd remains behind with 197 volunteers in brave problems. His most important exploration flight will now lack the powerful directional radio of the Mount Olympus. To get his men out, he must hope the icebreaker can crash her way back in time. Otherwise, he and his men will be frozen in for the 9 sunless months of the dark, treacherous Antarctic winter. Marooned, Admiral Byrd and his staff plan the big flight to the South Pole and far beyond. This is the culmination, the last fast flight. 4 planes spanning out over a continent of unknown territory larger than Texas, California, and Arizona combined. Over freezing wastes without people, without life, without vegetation. Nature's most formidable challenge to man. The 4 planes are gassed up. All controls triple checked. Motors heated. For they face cold as extreme as 60 below. Unrelenting burdens. Photographic units lead the parade of science to the planes. Each is a flying laboratory. The cameras are the trimetric guns and the K-17s that spied out enemy secret sources. Now each plane carries 250 pounds of film to record some of nature's last great mysteries. The war's secret radar magnetic detectors they assume, bolted on like bombs. In war, their electronic impulses spotted minefields buried deep under the surface. Now they will reach far below the ice, detect and identify minerals, coal, iron, precious ores. Byrd gets the word. Ready, sir? Towards the leading plane. And take off. Crews hasten to rock the ships and thus free the skis frozen to the ice. Now all the work that has gone before, the planning, the task of preparing ships, of training men, the perilous voyage through the ice. Now all of these investments of time and sometimes of suffering are coming to focus. Takeoffs for non-stop flights over the desolate, danger-studded wastes of Antarctica. Flights at great distance, the equivalent of back at home, swinging non-stop from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico. Aviation is all important in the Navy's Antarctic exploration. Just as aviation is all important in a modern Navy that must be strong under and above the sea, as well as on it. Out over the shelf ice, Byrd leads his 4 planes in the long climb over pressure ridge areas, heading for the polar plateau, 10,000 feet up. Below are no landing fields, only deep crevasses. Pressure ridges 100 feet high. Instant destruction for a plane forced down. Byrd pioneered the first South Pole flight in 1929. He applies again the practice of constant vigilance, careful calculations that assured his earlier successes. Over this cruel country, Byrd flies today at 3 miles a minute. In earlier explorations, 3 miles in one day was frequently the utmost for Shackleton and Scott for Britain, Amundsen for Norway, and Byrd himself for America. The Beardmore Glacier, 200 miles long, 50 wide, 1,000 feet deep, who knows? Byrd checks position by the sun compass. The glacier signals the South Pole itself. Here, Byrd drops the flag to the United Nations, carefully boxed, a symbol of America's goodwill to all nations. Now beyond the pole, Byrd focuses his cameras and magnetic detectors on land new to him, to all mankind.
In eastern group waters, seaplane tender Pine Island swings out a plane, listed on the fleet's roster as Mariner George 1. Crew members look out. No shadow of coming disaster troubles their young faces. Captain Caldwell, observer. Lieutenant J.G. Frenchy LeBlanc, pilot in command. Lieutenant J.G. Bill Kearns, co-pilot. Ensign Lopez, navigator. And a crew of 5 take off to map the treacherous Phantom coast.
Byrd's planes deep into the unknown are the eyes of civilization, recording, evaluating, mapping. Plateaus, mountain ranges with peaks 20,000 feet above sea level. The trimetric gun lenses, picking overlapping exposures every 3 seconds, photograph from horizon to horizon. Coal, a mountain of coal. Byrd later declares Antarctic mines, if once tapped, could supply the world's coal needs for centuries. These official motion pictures can give only a cross-section of the miles of photographic records accumulated on this expedition by the Navy. The exposed mapping film will take 5 years to assemble. Amplifying these are the radar magnetic detectors, accurately recording mineral discoveries of immense value for the future use of all mankind. England, Norway, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, South American countries, and Soviet Russia are claiming Antarctic territory. The United States recognizes no claim, and so far has made no formal claims for itself. But international policies cannot concern the Admiral now. His duty is to keep his flying laboratories functioning, to fulfill his dream of a lifetime. The word gas half gone, sir, comes from the engineer tabulating fuel tank readings. Byrd radios his pilots, return to base. By the third leg of their triangular course, the planes head back for Little America. Byrd's plane takes the widest swing fuel permits as the lenses of the Trimets continue recording new territory. This is the last big flight. Byrd is determined to record the maximum possible. One by one, the planes swing in over Tent City. Flight operations checks them in and safely down. Plane 2, plane 3, plane 4. But not plane 1. Byrd's plane is yet to be accounted for. Byrd is missing. Out over the ice, Byrd is in trouble. His starboard engine is cutting out. Now stops. His one remaining engine is losing power. The altimeter needle starts dropping down. The plane is losing altitude.
Off 4B1 to base. Off 4B1 to base. Position Q5. Engine out. Losing altitude.
The base prepares for rescue operations. Handicapped by the partial power of one engine, the plane is in jeopardy. Down she drops. The needle drops 3,000 feet downward. Threatening peaks around. A further drop might mean a crash. Only one hope: reduce the load, live, or at once. Maybe that way, maybe if enough weight goes, maybe she will hold. Already the mountains are above. She is deep in the valley, deep in the shadow of disaster. The needle drops downward from 1,700 feet.
Jettison all gear.
Only the precious films and records are safe. The gamble is life or death. The altimeter levels off at around 900 feet. Slowly she starts to climb. She is gaining altitude. Pilot signals, or roll. 3 hours later at the base, triple plane comes into sight. Men peer closely, tense, hushed, as they see the starboard drop dead. One engine landing is tricky at best. With skis on ice. Hold your fingers crossed for the pilot. Safe, good going. The greatest exploration flight of all history has ended in success. The flight beyond the South Pole. The flight beyond imagination.
But over the Pine Island in the eastern group is the shadow of tragedy. Captain Dupek flashes the word by radio.
To Eastern Task Group. From Task Group Commander. Mariner George 1 overdue. This group commenced standard search and rescue operations immediately.
Grim men with brave news, Captain Dupek. No time now for jubilation over his own escape. No mood for rejoicing. Bird knows better than any man the tragic import of the message. In the freezing danger of the Antarctic, seconds are hours. Minutes are days. Every resource of the expedition must be mobilized instantly.
All planes must take the air. All men stand alert for emergency alert. Over the ice pack, above the open sea, across the barrier. Mariner George 1 is down with men. No radio signals coming through. That means a crash. Search. Wherever the plane is, it must be found. For maddening, anxious days, fog shrouds the area where the accident most likely took place. Men are frank, yet daily at their own request, at their urging in fact, the crew of the Pine Island gathers for prayer service. On the 13th day, the weather breaks clear. Captain Dupek sends another PBM into the area heretofore shrouded in fog. At last, in clear visibility, the pilots and men scan water and pack ice along the Phantom coast. Wherever they are, 9 men of the George 1 have been lost for almost 2 weeks. Hope is thin. 5 hours out and a howl, pilot spots smoke. A signal fire. Some are alive down there. How badly hurt? How many live? George 1 smashed. The wreckage scattered. Some of it burned. And a message on the wing. Lopez, Henderson, Williams, dead. No seaplane can land on the ice. And the survivors reach open water. Howell must drop a message. We'll land Barrier's Edge 10 miles north. We'll drop flags to mark trails. If you can walk it, form circles. If not, form lines. Howell knows the gravity of the decision Captain Colville was reached. But if the men can't walk, the day may be saved. A precious day for the engine. Howell flashes the news. Captain Dupek gets the word and gives it to the Pine Island by loudspeaker.
Attention all hands. This is the Task Group Commander speaking. Mariner George 1 has been sighted. Rescue operations are in progress.
Howell circles his PBM over the wreckage. He watches for his answer. The huddle of men breaks apart. They've reached a decision. It's a circle. They'll try the 10-mile trek toward the PBM at the water's edge. Howell's crew have the relief gear ready now for the men below. Cargo chutes float the heavy packages down. First aid boxes, rations, skis, blankets. For men hungry, cold, hurt, and losing hope. The chutes are as lovely as shining stars. Symbols of life restored, but return to family, waiting, and praying. Now to mark the trail. PBM's crew have hundreds of flags, each weighted to land and stay upright. If fog should again close in on this desolate coast, there must be no second disaster. No wandering from the road to rescue. The survivors follow the trail markers. 5 able to walk, 1 on a sled. 10 miles to go. These men are marching out of the shadow of death into the sunshine of life. Aboard the rescue plane, ready to leave the barrier edge, the survivors, 6 thankful men, jerk out their story in bits of flesh. How Henderson, Lopez, and Williams died in the crash of explosion when they smashed up built full of civilians. How they found scattered cans of food, stove, fuel to keep it going. 1 tube of self-evaporator, just enough to keep Frenchy LeBlanc. They raised the injured pilot, barely alive. Proudly, they tell how Captain Colville consulted them all in providing their little food, how he kept watch, inspired their faith, how they prayed as men always do, when there is no other hope but prayer. Bill Kearns, co-pilot, grins hello. Christophe and Frenchy LeBlanc. Gorman carried him tenderly to Stoke stretcher. War and Robin pulled him out of the blazing nose of the plane. His back, hands, and face suffered third-degree burns, and in the Gethsemane of waiting for rescue, both legs were frozen to the knee. Amputation is inevitable, but he will live. The ship's company of the Pine Island reached their skipper, Captain Paul, observer on the flight. He says no ship ever looked so good to him as his own command. And again, he set foot on her deck. His executive officer greets him with sincere affection. Captain Dupek warmly welcomed the survivor. Co-pilot Kearns, broken arm in a sling. McCarthy, Tugger, Ward, the radio operator. And smiling Shorty Roberts, the motorman. The head is warm. A hot bath, clean sheets, and long hours of restoring sleep. Perhaps first, a moment to slice the main blade, by which good sailors use a ration of medicinal spirits, bourbon, juice. Later in sick bay, all the Frenchmen and Captain Paul enjoy their first full meal in 2 weeks. Kearns will go to Georgetown University and study for a career in diplomacy. McCarthy, who has a wife and 2 children in Sonoma, Southern California, being happy. Robert was the wheel horse in those desperate days, figured to keep on flying. He still loves her. And Paul knows that he will marry his school teacher sweetheart back in Reading, Pennsylvania.
News of the rescue finds the icebreaker with Admiral Cruisy fighting to wade through thickening ice to pick up Admiral Byrd and his men in Little America. Byrd is radioed for all speed.
At the base, the Admiral supervises Operation Secure. All essential records and scientific instruments are to be taken home. The planes must remain. They are stripped down with the hope that another American expedition, future year, may find them of use. Supply dumps are marked by pools. Now through the gates comes the old reliable workhorse, the ice. Final loading is the order. All roads lead to the bay. Last stretch out. The last long trek through the snow for the big Go-Devil sledges, loaded with men. But the excitement that always comes with sailing infects all hands, including the dogs. They sniff something important in the wind.
Ein Schluck Dolce Vita. Birra Moretti. Jetzt noch alkoholfrei.
With normal quarters for 75, the icebreaker must jam aboard the additional 197 men of the base body until, after the voyage north, he can transfer personnel to the big ships awaiting her at Scott Island. Byrd is among the last aboard. He can now report to Admiral Nimitz, Operation High Jump complete. Our men have achieved accomplishments unparalleled in the history of discovery. Our central group has flown far beyond the South Pole. Past 1/3 million square miles, never before seen by man.
Our eastern group mapped 3,000 miles of Atlantic coast and charted 40,000 square miles of coast-to-ocean areas hitherto unknown.
Our western group flying hundreds of air hours mapped the 4,000-mile sunset coast, make the amazing discovery of warm land in their own time.
In all, the expedition explored more than 1.5 million square miles. Our scientists, by use of the radar magnetic detector, have pinpointed fabulous treasures and resources of great significance for all mankind. The men who did the job, Navy, Army, Air Corps, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, scientists, are going tired. The rear guard of Admiral Byrd's 74,000 veterans of the Antarctic, trained to combat the sub-zero enemy of the polar continent. They're going home to their mothers, sweethearts, wives, children. Home, strong in the knowledge that they have met the Antarctic Navy's battalion in function. This is to be their lifelong reward. This knowledge is the Navy's highest commendation. Well done.
Operation Red Wing, Yuma. The US's Operation Red Wing was a series of 17 nuclear weapons tests in 1956, named after Native American tribes. It was designed to assess second-generation thermonuclear weapons, or H-bombs. But when it was dropped in the Pacific, the nuclear blast that the tiny device produced was not what the military initially intended. The fourth tryout during Operation Red Wing was carried out with the smallest and lightest nuclear warhead in the project. The weapon was named Yuma, after the Indian reservation in the southwestern U.S. With a 5-inch diameter and weighing only 96 pounds, Yuma was intended to fit inside an air-to-air defense missile. It was also among the first tests of the boosted fusion technology used to miniaturize and increase the yield of bombs. In contrast, the smaller initial fusion blast triggers an immense fission reaction that brings the devastation associated with standard nuclear weapons. On May 27, 1956, Yuma was dropped on the Pacific island of Oman. Instead of igniting a full plutonium-fueled explosion, the initial blast failed to detonate the second reaction. The tiny nuclear blast, known as a fizzle, was only 190 tons, or about 1.2% of the force of the bomb dropped in Hiroshima. The detonation was captured on camera and has been equated with the power to destroy just a couple of city blocks. 1 year after the failed Yuma explosion, the military finally succeeded in developing its first air-to-air nuke. The Air-2 Genie will remain in service until 1985, with over 3,000 manufactured models. Castle Bravo. Castle Bravo was the first of several tests of a brand new series of high-yield thermonuclear weapons conducted by the U.S. military in the Marshall Islands under Operation Castle. The detonation was the first atmospheric test of a nuke fueled by lithium deuteride. It was expected to yield a 6-megaton blast, but nuclear engineers were astonished by its ultimate power. On March 1st, 1954, the Castle Bravo detonation produced a 15-megaton yield. In terms of energy released, it was about 1,000 times more potent than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. The incident became the most powerful nuclear explosion that the U.S. has ever detonated. The miscalculation occurred because engineers only considered the lithium-6 isotope to be reactive. This isotope accounted for 40% of the lithium content. The remaining 60% was lithium-7 isotope, which produced a larger neutron flux than expected and contributed to the detonation's increased yield. The explosion sent a giant mushroom cloud nearly 22 miles into the air, leaving an enormous 250-foot deep crater. The radioactive fallout from the blast covered over 7,000 square miles, including the inhabited Rongelap and Oltrik atolls. It also spread over the seas, damaging countless maritime flora and fauna. Evacuation efforts organized by the U.S. and the United Nations proved too slow to prevent lethal radiation exposure. In the Rongelap atoll, white powder resembling snow fell from the skies while young children played with it. An hour and a half after the detonation, the radiation remnants reached the Japanese fishing vessel Lucky Dragon No. 5, which was 80 miles east of the test site in the middle of the ocean. 23 crew members suffered acute radiation syndrome, and the Japanese government expressed their outrage not long after. The gaseous fallout continued to spread beyond the atolls and around the world. Some radioactive material traces were discovered in India, Australia, Europe, Japan, and the U.S. The blast incited international outrage over the morality of atmospheric thermonuclear testing. The fallout from Castle Bravo has also been linked to a bout of several types of cancer, such as leukemia and thyroid cancer in the atoll's residents. Despite the indignation, Castle Bravo's tragic miscalculation did not stop thermonuclear testing. Operation Castle continued with a series of nuclear tests in the Marshall Islands. During 12 years, between 1946 and 1958, the U.S. conducted 87 nuclear weapons experiments in the Pacific Ocean. Bluebill Prime. In 1962, the United States carried out Operation Fishbowl, a series of high-altitude nuclear tests on Johnston Island in the Pacific Ocean. The test failed spectacularly when the Thor ballistic missile carrying the bomb suffered a stuck valve, causing it to lose thrust and spill fuel into the searing thrust chamber, where it ignited and engulfed the rocket in flames. Military officers immediately sent a command to destroy it, but their efforts quickly backfired. According to the initial Operation Fishbowl plan, the high-altitude nuclear tests were to be named Bluegill, Starfish, and Orca. If one of the tests failed, the next attempt would take over its name while adding the word prime. And Bluegill went off trajectory on June 2, 1962. The second attempt was planned for the following month. Bluegill Prime was launched on July 25th. It failed again when its Thor launch vehicle suffered a stuck valve and blocked the flow of rocket propellant through the combustion chamber. The engine then lost thrust, and unburned RP-1 fuel spilled into the hot thrust chamber, igniting it and starting a massive fire at the missile base. With the Thor launch vehicle now engulfed in flames, the range safety officers sent a specialized team to destroy it. The commanders split the rocket in two and ruptured both of its fuel tanks, completely destroying the missile and damaging the launch pad. The warhead charges also exploded asymmetrically, spraying the area with radioactive substances. Although the nuclear warhead did not explode, some radioactive materials from its core contaminated Johnston Island. Burning rocket fuel flowed through the cable trenches, causing extensive chemical contamination in the area. The U.S. government ordered the military to decontaminate the atoll before the severely damaged Thor launch pad could be rebuilt. A hasty effort ensued, and the contaminated top layer of soil was scraped and dumped into the lagoon. But only 2 years later, the radioactive sediment would be added back to the atoll when it was used as a landfill to expand Johnston Island. Operation Upshot Knothole. Operation Upshot Knothole was a series of 1953 nuclear tests in the Nevada Proving Ground. The operation included the first test of a device known as Hydride-1, a fission bomb fueled by enriched uranium hydride. The exercise was supposed to produce a lower yield than other thermonuclear weapons, but also use more efficient fissile material. Still, the test ultimately failed when it produced a much smaller yield than originally planned. An estimated 18,000 Department of Defense personnel and members of all four armed services participated in the Operation Upshot Knothole program as observers and tactical maneuvers to support activities in scientific studies. The Hydride-1 Ruth shot was fired on March 31, 1953. Even though it produced a slow-motion fireball, the test ultimately failed and fizzled, resulting in a small 200-ton yield, a much lower fraction of its predicted 1.5 to 3 kiloton blast. To add to the failure, the weapon only vaporized the top third of the 300-foot tower which was detonated. Parts of it scattered across the sea, and the remaining lower core was left standing. A second Hydride-1 was tested 2 weeks later, using deuterium and a different concentration of enriched uranium in its solid spherical pit. It had the same weight and dimensions as its predecessor, with only a different pit fuel mix. The Ray test was fired atop a shorter 100-foot tower on April 11th. Although it fared slightly better than the Ruth tryout, it still performed way below expectations. The detonation produced a 220-ton yield, about a tenth of its predicted 0.5 to 1 kiloton blast. Though regarded as total failures, Ruth and Ray contributed very little fallout contamination to the surrounding environment. Operation Upshot Knothole, however, dosed more than 20,000 soldiers with dangerous levels of radiation. It also released about 35,000 kilocuries of radioiodine into the atmosphere, resulting in civilian radiation exposure that amounted to 89 million person-rads of thyroid tissue exposure. The Bainbury Incident. After the 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty banned all above-ground nuclear explosions, many countries took their detonations underground. In one such test at the Nevada test site in 1970, the military detonated a 10-kiloton nuke 850 feet underground that could not be contained, resulting in disastrous consequences. The Partial Test Ban Treaty, signed by the U.S. and 120 other nations, banned nuclear weapons testing in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. The treaty was meant to stop the spread of nuclear materials into the atmosphere and limit human exposure to dangerous radioactive fallout. Consequently, many countries resorted to dangerous underground testing conduction. On December 18, 1970, the United States carried out an underground trial that later became known as the Bainbury Incident. During the Bainbury test at the Nevada test site, a nuclear bomb was lowered into a small 7-foot diameter hole. Once the device was 900 feet underground, the atomic bomb was detonated. About 300 feet away from the explosion, a fissure opened in the ground, and an enormous cloud of radioactive dust poured skyward. The mushroom cloud could be seen as far away as Las Vegas, and the fallout spread all the way to California. For a relatively small bomb, Bainbury had an unexpectedly significant impact on the atmosphere. Although government workers operating in the area were evacuated, hundreds were exposed to radiation. In an official report, The Atomic Energy Commission noted that almost 500 cars were contaminated and had to be sprayed down and vacuumed with a special device before being returned to their owners. The investigation also established that the human exposure was within the established safety rules and limitations. But 2 men with high radiation exposure eventually contracted leukemia, and their families spent years fighting for compensation and advocating against underground nuclear testing. The courts eventually ruled that the government's handling of the situation was negligent, but not liable, and no damages were awarded. The test site and subsequent nuclear tests were shut down for 6 months, while authorities investigated the cause of the accident, ultimately attributing it to abnormally high water content in the medium surrounding the detonation point. New rules were eventually put in place to limit the workers' potential exposure to radiation fallout.
Emergency was the requirement for an evaluation of the effectiveness of nuclear detonations at high altitude for telling incoming ICBM. Another must was the ability to detect incoming ICBM through high altitude detonation environments for both defensive and offensive applications. Specially designed pods were engineered to be attached to the Thor missile and deployed to recalculated positions from the burst. Many rocket payloads were prepared for firing into and around the weapon detonation area to obtain data on the fundamental physics of the burst phenomenon.
On March 1st, 1954, the United States detonated the country's first thermonuclear weapon, or fusion bomb, within 1 second of the explosion. The fireball was almost 5 miles wide and hotter than the sun. Within 1 minute, the mushroom cloud was higher than most commercial planes fly. In under 10 minutes, the result of the explosion would be 100 kilometers wide. The fireball was reportedly seen up to 400 kilometers or 250 miles away. The indescribable flash of the light from the fireball made the bone of nearby men visible through their flesh. The bomb expected yield of about 6 megatons of TNT. However, the actual yield was significantly higher than anticipated, measuring around 15 megatons. This is the story of the deadliest bomb, the Castle Bravo. Let's take a closer look inside this destructive force. The Castle Bravo consisted of 2 sections. The primary, a fission bomb similar to the one detonated over Hiroshima, and the secondary, a fusion bomb. The primary bomb featured conventional chemical explosives surrounding a beryllium mirror casing, within which a small plutonium sphere was housed. The detonation process involved a 32-bridge wire detonator placed around the conventional explosive. Beneath the primary bomb lay the hydrogen or fusion bomb. The secondary fusion bomb comprised a uranium cylinder, the fuel for the fusion reaction, lithium deuteride, and at the core of the cylinder sits a rod of plutonium. In between the fission and fusion is an encasing made of styrofoam. The device was mounted in a shot cab on an artificial island built on a reef off Namu Island in Bikini Atoll. Here's how it works. First, the 32-bridge wire detonators release an electric spark to detonate the chemical bomb. The chemical bomb detonation causes compression inside the plutonium and releases bursts of neutrons. One atom of plutonium is hit by a neutron, splits into 2, and releases energy, producing 2 or 3 additional neutrons. Each of these goes on to react or split other plutonium atoms, thus maintaining a chain reaction that produces a high level of heat, higher than even that at the center of our sun. 100 million degrees Celsius. The center of the sun is 15 million degrees Celsius. This temperature results in an atomic explosion. The fission explosion creates high-energy gamma rays and X-rays, which heat up the styrofoam and turns it into plasma. The heat and pressure of the plasma compress the fusion cylinder, causing the lithium deuteride to react and form helium and more neutrons. The neutrons cause the uranium casing and plutonium rod to undergo more fission reactions. This causes more pressure on lithium deuteride. This produces more fusion, which releases more neutrons, which causes more fission. The positive feedback loop fission-fusion reaction goes back and forth until a huge explosion occurs, ripping everything apart. When the Castle Bravo casing bunker and artificial island become a blinding ball of plasma, it creates a crater 200 meters wide and over 75 meters deep. Pulverized coral, radioactive and falling like ash, was begin to carry unexpected wind toward unexpected people. Approximately 80 miles away, the Japanese fishing boats were exposed to significant levels of radioactive fallout, leading to health issues and, tragically, the death of one crew member. The winds carried the radioactive particles eastward, affecting islands. Rongelap and Utrecht atolls were hit the hardest. By 1963, 9 years after the bomb, according to secretive medical studies, fallout led to long-term health problems for the affected populations, including increased rates of cancer, thyroid disorders, and birth defects. The fallout from the Castle Bravo test was the worst in human history. The Castle Bravo, a testament to human ingenuity and destructive power, stands as a haunting reminder of the consequences of harnessing nuclear energy. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you're notified when I make a new video. For more updates and suggestions, check out Learn from the Base social media. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot, and I will see you next time.
Ist es wirklich möglich, dass Sie finanziell frei werden, sodass Geld nie mehr ein Sorgenthema ist?
Иногда я горько шучу. Казахстан по-настоящему свободная страна. Что хочу, то и делаю. Хочу на ядерный полигон поеду, хочу на ракетный полигон поеду.
Ашық. Мылтықпен жүріп соғысқанымыз ат себерге бөлгеніміз жақсы еді. А қазір бізді біреулер өлтіріп жатыр. Білмейміз кім екенін. Ол радиация ма? Ол саясат та, ол басқа бір нәрсе.
Только лишь для того, чтобы какой-то стране нужно придумать что-то новое, чтобы убить как можно больше людей, и для этого нужен полигон.
Взрывы производились в атмосфере и замерялись, как это, значит, влияет на человеческий организм. То есть подопытные кролики.
Мысалы мұсылман дінді біз сынақ өмірге келген адамдар.
We're traveling beyond the reach of civilization. For hundreds of kilometers around us, there are no power lines, no filling stations, no mobile phone coverage. This huge area of steppe is still known as the Semipalatinsk test site. It was here the Soviet Union gave violent birth to the nuclear age. For 40 years, a massive experiment was conducted on the land, water, animals, and people.
Самолет загорелся, который испытывали. Его двигатель от жара вытек лужи на землю и застыл как информационный двигатель.
Dmitry Kalmykov, director of the Karaganda Eco Museum, has been collecting artifacts from the test site for more than 20 years. He believes the main problem is not radiation, but lack of adequate information.
Мы опрашивали полицейских, врачей, учителей, работников акимата. Вы не представляете, насколько обескураживающие ответы. На вопрос, живете ли вы на территории полигона, отвечают совершенно хаотическим образом. Часть людей считают да, часть нет. Никакой связи с реальностью. То есть никто не информирует население для того, чтобы они знали, там загрязненное использовать нельзя. Здесь чисто.
This lake was formed in the crater left by a nuclear explosion in 1965. It was part of a plan to provide easier access to water for the residents of the arid Kazakh steppe. There's been little discussion about radiation. According to Soviet propaganda, the water in the nuclear lake posed no threat to the people who relied on it.
Показали, что вода из искусственных водоемов совершенно безопасна для человека.
Many people used to fish here and sell or eat their catch. Kazakhstan later designated the lake as a site affected by nuclear testing. But it's still accessible to the public and seems to have an abundance of carp.
Сіз білесіз бе, негізі мұнда радиация бар дегенді? Білесіз. Неге қорықпайсыңдар? Қорықпайсыңдар ма? Ол балық күйге. Қашы күйет, кемі балық.
The residents of the nearby villages continue to fish here. They can see the lake and touch the fish, but they don't feel the radiation.
На границе с полигоном живут десятки тысяч. Если посмотреть на карту, вот тут село, идет граница полигона, потом она делает вот так вот, объезжает это село, но село не на полигоне. Но если вы из рогатки стрельнете в любую сторону, то это там полигон.
School teacher Bolatbek Baltabek lives in Sarjal, one of the villages just outside the test site. He remembers being asked to leave his house before nuclear tests.
Biz сол уақытта әке-шешемізбен бірге бұл далаға шығып тұрамыз. Сол белгілі бір уақытта жер дірілдей жөнеледі. Мен бала кезімде өте қорқынышты есімде қалған сол ай сайын болсын бір кісі асып өліп жатады. Соны онда халық өздерінше бұл полигонның кесірі деп өздері диагноз қойып жатады. Сейтен деген ағалар тұр, соны қуаныш деген ол болды, бізбен өлшерлес. Басына қатерлі ісік шықты да, екінші жас оқып жатқан кезінде ол болды, қайтыс болды. Бізбен замандас Маржан деген қыз тұрды, ол да солай аққан аурумен ауырып, ол да мектеп жасында қайтыс болып кетті. Зухра деген кластасымен Зухрамыз қайтыс болып кетті, ол да аққан аурумен. Сол Зухра қайтыс болғаннан кейін, одан кейін 5-6 жылдан кейін оның сіңілісі Жанар деген ол да қайтыс болды. Адамдар бізде неден өліп жатқанын көп білмейді мысалы. Ауырған сияқты өліп қалады, ауырған сияқты өліп қалады. Бізде сонда үнсіз соғыс жүріп жатыр. Ашық, қолтықпен жүріп соғысқанымыз, атысып жүрген өлгеніміз жақсы. А қазір бізді біреулер өлтіріп жатыр. Білмейміз кім екенін. Ол радиация ма? Ол саясат па? Ол басқа бір нәрсе.
Studies show that the radiation left in the wake of nuclear tests can cause cancer and other illnesses, including mental disorders. But locals have no way of knowing what the impact might be on their lives.
Полигон деген жай ғана нәрсе емес. Бірақ сіздер алыстан ғана естисіздер. Сіздерге мысалы телевизордан атылып тұрған нені көрсетеді, бітті әр жағында сіздер не болады. Оның астында біз жүріп жатырмыз. Мына қазан жанып жатыр, соның жанында достың жанында жүрген адамдармыз. Шын нәрсе. Бізде адам басқа адамдар мүмкін үлкен саясаткерлер шырын сияқты. Біз адамбыз ғой, солар сияқты. Мұсылман дінде біз сынақ өмірге келген адамдармыз. Алланың сынағы емес, адамның сынағында жүрміз.
Взрывы производились в атмосфере и замерялись, как это, значит, влияет на человеческий организм. То есть подопытные кролики. Мы были колонией и до сих пор остаемся колонией.
This is ground zero of the first Soviet nuclear test, conducted in 1949. Dozens of nuclear and thermonuclear explosions formed many more craters in the decades that followed. Today, 30 years after the last explosion, the level of radiation here is 100 times higher than normal. But the former test site remains open to visitors. Anyone can come here.
Иногда я горько шучу, Казахстан по-настоящему свободная страна. Кто хочу, то и делаю. Хочу на ядерный полигон поеду, хочу на ракетный полигон поеду.
The town of Kurchatov was the scientific center serving the Semipalatinsk test site. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, its population dropped by nearly half.
The National Nuclear Center is still the biggest employer in the town, but most of the test site and military infrastructure has crumbled. Nearby are the remains of what was once a secretive military town. Chagan didn't appear on Soviet maps, although over 10,000 people lived here. Today, the name is on the map, but the town is an empty shell. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the nuclear tests in Kazakhstan came to an end. Russia removed the nuclear weapons. Underground missile silos were blown up, and Kazakhstan became a nuclear-free country. The Semipalatinsk test site was officially closed. But Kazakhstan agreed to lease some of its other territories to Russia as test sites. Modern weapons, including strategic and ballistic missiles, are still being tested. Russia has rented 3 test sites and the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Their total area, excluding Baikonur, is over 86,000 square kilometers, which is larger than Austria. Russia pays Kazakhstan $20 million a year, or $2.30 per hectare.
Каждые несколько лет, к сожалению, ракетная техника дает сбой, взрывается и падает из космоса. Иногда, когда все пошло не так, такие обломки падают из космоса вам во двор или там, где трясется ваш свод. Это самая верхняя ступень, разгонный блок ракеты-носителя «Протон». Вы можете видеть, это самый большой подарок из космоса.
Владимир, звонить землю жатырмы? Да? Hayda. Мужик потерял. Землю жинок первого потерял.
80-year-old Tabildi Akhmetov has been a shepherd his whole life. He's lived in Tay-Soygan for more than 30 years. Aside from his family, there are no other residents for many kilometers in any direction. Akhmetov went to check if all the scrap metal had been sold, as his son had said.
А что же он такого? Не темирдевой дай. Мусор жинать наргизе, те чеверем депарнажи, а я на месте погону. Осла темир жинать. Перевздор вот это самое жахтово.
Казах?
Казах жоп. Ну, видите. Давай, шашева.
Russia launches test missiles from its military site at Kapustin Yar, and when there's a malfunction, Tay-Soygan is the landing site. The village used to be part of a testing zone until Moscow changed its lease in 2016, handing part of the territory back to Kazakhstan. Now, Tay-Soygan village is outside the test zone, but it remains in a path of falling objects. Residents are used to finding fallen chunks of metal, though they say this has not happened since 2016. Tuzgende Urbesinov, the head of the local council of elders, has repurposed the metal sphere as a water tank for his outdoor shower. Locals filmed this unidentified object over Kapustin Yard on July the 4th, 2018, while trying to guess what it could be. Early the next day, Lukban Akhmedyarov, chief editor of the Uralskaya Nedelya newspaper, arrived to record the remnants of the crash.
Российские военные сказали, что это якобы метеорологический зонд, который пускается, чтобы предсказать погоду, посмотреть погоду. Лично мое субъективное мнение, что во всех случаях мы имеем дело с военными ракетами и объектами. Другое дело то, что официально российские военные не подтверждают никогда, что это военные. И казахстанские власти на этот счет в принципе ничего не комментируют, они просто говорят, вот есть российская сторона, вот пусть она и комментирует. Все, что мы пишем журналисты про полигон, официально власти вообще никак не реагируют. Они предпочитают делать вид, что нет такой темы, нет такой проблемы.
Akhmedyarov believes Kazakh officials avoid raising the issue with Russia in order to maintain smooth relations with their powerful strategic partner and military ally.
Первое впечатление, которое я получил от полигона, это когда я увидел огромное количество детей с патологией. Нужно будет признать, что военный полигон, который арендует Россия здесь, в Казахстане, он оказывает такое негативное воздействие. Это политическое такое решение. И местные власти, естественно, не могут себе позволить такую политическую самостоятельность в этом плане. Этой политической самостоятельности в этом вопросе нет даже у официальной Астаны. Только лишь для того, чтобы кому-то, какой-то стране нужно придумать что-то новое, чтобы убить как можно больше людей, и для этого нужен полигон.
Kulbash Bozova, a widow and retiree, spends her days caring for her disabled daughter, Gulmira, in the village of Khan Orda. Another daughter died after suffering from a similar condition at the age of 15. She says doctors have blamed her children's health problems on the family's proximity to the test site.
У местных крестьян нет спутниковых телефонов, и нет доступа в интернет, и нет прогнозов погоды из космоса, ничего у них нет. Поэтому у людей часто бывает недовольство. Ну вот они летают, они что-то платят, иногда падают ракеты, у них там какое-то токсичное топливо. А что взамен? В чем польза?
я обращаюсь не только к нашим властям, но и к российским властям. Если вы дружественная страна, ну пора закрыть уже эти полигоны, потому что это убивает нас.
Activist Mukhtar Tayjan has been trying to warn the public about what he says are the severe health risks posed by the rocket tests.
Люди привыкли к этому, ведь 70 лет прошло. Потом мало ли кто им объясняет, что за ракеты там испытываются, на каком топливе, что это гептил.
In 2013, a Russian Proton rocket crashed shortly after its launch from the Baikonur facility in Kazakhstan. According to official data, 600 tons of the rocket fuel known as heptil spilled onto the ground and into the air. It was the first time many Kazakhs had heard the name of the toxic substance. Doctors and environmental researchers say heptil poses serious risks to human health.
Как у нас своих детях проводить испытания? Ну, это как бы открытая лаборатория. Вот мы независимы уже сколько лет. А мы что делаем для народа? Люди до сих пор там же живут. Как жить, так и живут. Как это можно терпеть в себе?
Physician and environmental activist Gulnara Taumanova has been studying the negative effects of rocket launches in the area for many years.
Мы находили самые опасные радионуклиды в биопробах. В крови находили радиоактивный тритий, то есть тяжелый водород. С каждым годом хуже показатели. У детей намного было хуже показателей, чем у прадедушки.
Mayaragul Sakirova lives in the village of Jiakum, near the test site. Her 5-year-old son, Alekhan, has Down syndrome. There's no connection between these two things, but both provide her with government financial support.
Пенсиясы 64 теңге. Полигоны 4800. Постоянно тасылайды, тасылды, сол полигон былай, күнде тасылайды. Тасылады.
This is what the official document looks like, confirming $12 monthly compensation for living near the test site.
Им платят копейки, продолжают платить. И что это значит? Они что, живут в грязном месте? За что им платят? Если это место грязное, их надо тут же отселить. Люди продолжают жить на полигоне, рядом с полигоном, используют загрязненные земли. Невозможно каждую корову проанализировать. Они, лошади, попадают на рынок, мы их все кушаем. Очень неумная ситуация, я говорю.
We tried to schedule interviews with several officials in the capital, Astana, but they declined to comment. Activists, on the other hand, are ready to raise their voices. Artist Askat Ahmedyarov has used performance, videos, installations, and political protests to make himself heard.
Если через эту форму я смогу довести до сознания людей опасность происходящего, то я считаю, выполнил свою функцию.
Another artist, Pasha Kass, staged his protest at the test site itself with this reproduction of Edward Munch's The Scream.
Останавливающаяся свалка ядерных отходов. Государство продолжает экспериментировать над людьми. Это молчание. Ужас. Отчаяние. Преступление.
легко решаемая проблема. Исследования проведены, известно, где загрязнули землю. Надо поставить забор. Если люди живут рядом, купить людям дома в чистой территории. Это немного людей, не знаю, 20-30 тысяч семей. Купить им красивые дома в чистом месте и все. Сказать всем, мы покончили с грязным советским прошлым. Все эти проблемы решены. У вас чистая территория, живите и процветайте. Забудьте. Это так просто, но это не решается десятками лет.
Minus 10 minutes.
You are approaching Surface Zero on D-Day, 14th of May, 1955. In less than 10 minutes, you will become an eyewitness to a most unusual atomic test. We'd like to use that time to tell you the story behind Operation Wigwam, a joint military and scientific operation important to our future security. What would be the impact of atomic weapons upon the freedom of the seas? Operation Crossroads at Bikini in 1946 gave us half the answer. We discovered what an atomic detonation in shallow water could do to surface ships. But half an answer is not enough when the question involves our country's safety. We had an urgent need to know just how efficiently an underwater A-bomb could kill an enemy submarine at sea. You all know how we did it in World War II. We had to do it with tons of high explosive. It was a costly business, and not nearly effective enough. It cost millions of dollars to search out and find each enemy sub, and this expense did not guarantee a kill. Too many got away. The cost of not killing them was even more expensive. Billions of dollars, thousands of lives, cargo ships, naval vessels, troop ships. These were the reasons why we needed urgently to know how to stop an enemy submarine permanently.
Hold your parcel. Make some noise. Sie buchen den neues Bord. Sie verbringen dort den Ort. Die Bänke sind
New weapons must be thoroughly tested under scientifically controlled conditions before they can be proven useful to our national defense. Several hundred feet below this barge is suspended an atomic bomb. But if we ever had to use it, how effective would it be? Operation Wigwam was conceived to answer these questions. Firm belief in its necessity was based on studies conducted by scientific and military personnel since 1950. Wigwam was launched as an Armed Forces Special Weapons project in June of 1953. Almost a year later, the carefully prepared plan was published as a secret document. But there were many problems to solve before Operation Wigwam could become operational. The project offered our experienced Navy a new challenge to its skill and secrecy. Wigwam scientists were exploring new fields of research without the benefit of very much previous scientific data. Special consideration had to be given to the choice of area that could be used for this type of atomic test. Extensive studies were made of weather histories for many recommended locations and of the complexities of ocean currents at different times of the year. A large percentage of the budget was spent to solve this problem. The exact locality and time of year for the test were finally selected with the purpose of avoiding any schools of commercial fish. All of these studies were conducted with the knowledge that the amount of radioactivity resulting from Wigwam would be but a drop in the bucket. The ocean waters are vast, and we were testing a single A-bomb. To determine the military effectiveness of this underwater explosion, we had to have target submarines. To evaluate this effectiveness accurately at different ranges, we needed 3 identical targets. To simulate an enemy sub more realistically, these targets would be submerged and towed at measured distances from zero. It was essential for us to know the weapon's most effective range. So one of the 3 sister subs would be towed within the killing range, one which had been carefully created just to be destroyed. She was the first ship of her kind ever to join the Navy. Nicknamed the Squaw, her full name was Squaw Number 12. She's never had an engine. Wherever this squaw went, she was in tow. Due to the hazardous nature of her underwater mission, she could never be assigned a crew. There's no man in our Navy that we'd order aboard to serve on this squaw's boat. So she was manned by robot instruments with electronic eyes and fingers to sense and to communicate the information that we had to know concerning the details of her fate. To prepare for the final mission, the squaw was put through several dry run trials, and some that weren't so dry. Finally, at D-Day -2, squaw number 12, along with her 2 sister squaws, and the rest of task group 7.3, arrived at the point of rendezvous, not very far from zero. Squaw 12, destined to be stationed within the killing range of the first deep underwater atomic shot. Then she's secured to this small barge with an underwater A-bomb many hundred feet below. Many types of measuring instruments are assigned their floating stations, while others are put overboard to record and relay valuable scientific information. The entire array, now in tow by a single fleet tug, forms a sea serpent several miles long, the longest sea serpent in history. With the security guard alert for uninvited observers, the task group prepares for night steaming. Tomorrow will be D-Day.
-2 hours. Each minus 10 minutes. 30 seconds to zero time. 25 seconds to zero time. 20 seconds to zero time. 15 seconds to zero time. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The liberated power of an atomic weapon is easily swallowed up among the mightier forces of the sea. Specially adapted ships, remotely controlled by shielded crews, steam into the hot water minutes after the explosion to measure the amount of radioactive residue. And wherever the currents may carry it, this ship and crew will follow, gathering scientific data until all traces disappear. If any radioactive remnants escape to the air, these aircraft will detect them. The operational phase of Wigwam is completed. Squaw 12 and her sister subs played their supporting parts well. Their performance taught us what we needed most to know: how to stop an enemy submarine quickly, efficiently, permanently. Perhaps the atomic age can bring a lasting freedom, not just of the seas,